Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name's Charlie Huntz. I'm the owner of Charlie's Queer Books over in Fremont. I just want to say a quick, very big thank you to Town Hall and to Seattle Public Library because their partnership has been essential to bringing authors like Torrey and supporting our bookstore. So thank you all for showing up for it, and hopefully we can provide more awesome programming. So typically, author introductions spotlight prestigious awards and accolades, but tonight's discussion challenges us to step beyond those markers of institutional validation and focus on the creative and the subversive ways that these authors have forged their paths. When Torrey first approached us about organizing this event, she mentioned wanting to do something different. She shared how she had lived in Seattle in the Freelard neighborhood, not far from our bookstore, during a formative period in her writing career. And for her, this event is a homecoming of sorts, a chance to reflect on the ways in which the queer community has often crafted imaginative ways of being as a response to systemic exclusion in heteronormative society. But in a similar vein, the queer and trans community and authors have carved out paths for their stories, navigating and often subverting the traditional publishing system to bring their voices to light. So tonight we're joined by 5 extraordinary authors, of course, Torrey Peters, and then local legends, Ebo Barton, Corinne Manning, Aster Olson, and Amber Flame. Yep. Each of them have made their mark in the publishing world either by navigating its structures or rewriting the rules entirely. Their work ensures that their vital stories are told, amplified, and celebrated. So together, they bring a wealth of insights, challenges, and triumphs to the stage tonight. And as they discuss their journeys, let us remember that stories like theirs and spaces like this are what keep the pulse of art and resistance alive. So thank you for being here. It's an honor to share this meaningful event with you. So let's get started.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming. This is, I don't know if it's a homecoming because I only lived here like a year and a half, but it kind of feels a little bit like it, and I kind of wanted to make it one. And I want to explain a little bit the format of this night because it's the only time I'm doing this on my tour. And usually, I talk about my book, I try and make a few jokes, sell a few books, and move on. And this time, I was actually for Seattle, I want to do something different. And I just kind of want to say what happened to me in Seattle because I think I became the writer I am now in Seattle with the people who are in the audience and around, and I kind of wanted to kind of check in essentially. So I moved to Seattle, and I'd had an MFA, and I had kind of given up on being a writer. I'd written a novel, and nobody wanted it. It was my first one. It was about glowing poop, so fair, But I was pretty sad about it, and I was I'm not going to be a writer. If no one wants my glowing poop novel, there's no future for me. But anyway, what happened is Casey Platt and Sybil Lamb were doing a book tour, and they came through. And it was with Topside Press, which is defunct now. It's a Brooklyn trans press. But they came through, and they did this thing where they were we're gonna have Casey and Sybil read, but anybody else who wants to read with them can read. You get 6 minutes. And I was I'm not going to read. And the publisher, kind of knew about me. I was you got to read. And so I was like, okay, I like went through my stuff, and I was like, there's gonna be other trans people there, I guess. I should read something trans, and I had something that was like about cross dressing, and I went to this event, and I read. Well, they read first, and they were great. Everybody loved it. This one girl wrote a story about how her cat had a laser or something that was so weird that I still obviously remember it years later. But anyway, then I read, and I was reading about cross-dressing, and I was very ashamed of it, actually. And I started reading, and I think like my shame was kind of like in the room with me, like people could feel the shame. And it was kind of like about there were all these trans people, and like the way my shame was like a little like I was ashamed to be like there with them, or be one of them, or be like them, and I totally bombed, like totally, like it was like nobody was making eye contact with me by the end of it, and I had never read in a room like that before. I'd never read in like a queer literary scene. I'd read for, I don't know who I was writing for before, but whoever loves glowing poop, I guess. And it was so incredibly formative for me to like bomb that way, to just totally fuck up and like go sit down and feel like, and be like, why did that happen? Like what happened there? And afterwards, I went out with people. They were all very nice to me, and it was so. I guess I could have given up, but instead I was just like so baffled by it. And I was like, "What? I want to do this. I want to figure it out again." And I started going to reading with lots of other, writing for and reading with queer writers and trans writers, and it was Kelvin Gimpelovich who has a collection and moved to Boston, had an art collective, and so basically the way I learned to write now, and the stories are in there. I started self-publishing. I started doing things like that. Like who I am now happened with that scene in Seattle, and so I kind of was like, well, if I'm coming back to Seattle, like yeah, I want to promote my book or whatever, but I kind of want to like revisit that because I haven't been here in a long time. I don't know what's with this scene, and I was like, maybe I can kind of convene people who are doing what made me the writer I am now in Seattle now, and kind of check in, and also like to do it. I think especially in this moment where the institutions that maybe I aspired to or other people aspired to for the last 10 years aren't the places that maybe I don't want to go anymore. Maybe other people don't want to go there either anymore. And that means that like the kind of thing that I was doing 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, I don't want to count the years, but that is, I want to talk about it tonight. So, I'll read some of Stag Dance, but I wanted to check in. So maybe you all could introduce yourselves and say, say kind of what you're up to now, and we could start at that end if you're. Sorry. I happened to be looking at you when I said that. I apologize.
It's on. Wonderful. My name is Amber Flame, and I have 2 books of poetry out. I also have a blues band called Last of the Red Hot Mamas that released an album last year. And I work as a program director for Hedgebrook, which is a writing residency for women-identified writers on Whidbey Island. And I mean, since we were chatting backstage, I feel like we're like mid-conversation already, so it's hard to remember how to bring you all into where we're talking. But Ibo and I go way back. We've known each other for at least years.
Because I'm 17, I don't really know how long.
I mean, I was talking like Head Start. Remember Head Start?
Yeah.
We go back to Head Start. We are both babies, clearly. And just, like watching things fall apart, come back together, fall apart, come back together. And then Corinne, I know because I mean, I've known you through writing community, but a different writing community entirely. But Corinne is also a contributor to one of my new ventures. I'm a co-founder with Elena Ellis of Generous Press, which is a romance publishing press that is dedicated to publishing the love stories of BIPOC, LGBTQ, and disabled folk. And we released our anthology last year. Corinne was in it. You can, I believe, purchase it if you would like to. It's 22 new writers to romance fiction, and really the mission is to put these stories back in our hands and to hear, there's a huge market for romance, so it's like good business. And we talked a little bit about, like, what does it mean to do good business in this time? But also, like, why aren't we the ones getting the money for writing our stories? That's all. I think we should get the money for writing our stories. So that's what we're trying to do. And I think that, like, that's feeling like, when I think of this trash fire, this apocalypse that we're in, I think about how we were talking about going really local and how building those little communities where one or two people are going to show up every time. And that's what was happening. But we didn't realize as babies that we were maybe benefiting from somebody who, like, shows up every time. And what it takes to do that now is, like, as the elders in community. Not you. Right. You're like 2 years younger, so you're still in middle school.
If nobody wants to claim being the elder, I will do it.
Yeah.
I'm willing.
You're willing to take on elder? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, just like, how do we build now and how do you show up? And I think the pandemic taught us that looks like a lot of different things. It doesn't necessarily look like in Seattle, in the city you live in. It might look like people you've met from across the world coming back together and saying, I need people. You want to be people.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ebo Barton. I have one collection of poetry that I self-published called Insubordinate. It's my collection of poetry, my introductory collection of poetry. And I've been in Seattle for about 19 years now, something around 19 years, and I've been in poetry community for 19 years. So the reason why I stayed here in Seattle, I'm from Southern California. I came up here because, fortunately, unfortunately, I served in the U.S. Navy. The reason why I used to come into Seattle from Everett was for the Poetry Slam, where I then connected with all of these writers that were not just slam poets. They had different writer lives outside of all of that, right? So I got connected to all of these different networks. And it was at Bumbershoot, where, when Bumbershoot, you can get a ticket at Starbucks for $5 or something like that. There was poetry events, and in that moment, I decided, I was like, I have to stay here in Seattle. And I have to connect with these writers. And as I grew up, like, I started to grow up with other writers too, right? And so I got connected to all these different ways of existing in poetry and in writing in general. Like, going through the slam scene while also still writing on the page was two things you kind of have to choose between often, right? So I wanted to do both so bad. Right. And I think that in that, the beauty that came in that is that I started connecting, like, all of these writers here. I feel like I've overlapped with you at some point, whether as an audience member or as, a feature on a stage or whatever. So, that was the benefits of me being there. Nice to meet y'all.
Ebo, could you share the event that you do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's happening tomorrow and every other third Thursday, if you're into it, okay? So I'm going to let you know. It's a creative cannabis event called Smokin' Word, and the beginning parts of it... The beginning parts of it is we do a little bit of writing together, a little bit discussion, and then writing, a little bit of socializing. There is cannabis around, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. It's all optional, but it is there. And then we do an open mic at the end of the show. You can also find us on Instagram at Smokin' Word 206. And then I also do a pop-up poetry slam event that happens monthly. And you can find that on Instagram at Pop-Up Poetry Seattle. But yeah, take a look.
Pop-up poetry.
Every time. But yeah, so take a look and join us. And just you can also start finding community there as well. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think that that's something that we were talking about is just like, what does it actually take for us to, especially in Seattle, for us to go to each other's events? My name is Corinne Manning. I am the author of We Had No Rules, which came out like right at the start of the pandemic. Like I was in Canada about to launch the event, and then the stay-at-home order came in, and I like receded into the background. I'm from New Jersey originally. I moved to Seattle after my MFA, partially because I was really compelled by what I saw as this incredible literary scene. I had a single friend here, and she was having such a good time that I decided to come. And the first day that I arrived, a friend of mine was in town, was like, oh, we need someone to MC this event at this place, Hugo House. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, I think I'll like be getting off the freeway at 6 p.m. And I like pulled up and I like MC'd this event. I have an Aries rising, and it like really, like in my 20s, it was like really on. I was like doing it all. And so like one of the things that we were talking about backstage is this like, there was this time in Seattle where it felt like, and you know, again, this is like speaks to youth, but like I remember going to everybody's event, and like every night I was at a reading series, and sometimes I was going like, you know, like going to see Amber, and then I was like, oh, then there's this other reading series, and Ebo's there, and like just like trying to get as much of it in as possible. And things have really changed for a lot of reasons that I think we'll get into. I used to run 2 reading series here. Did I? No, I ran one. I'm like, did I run 2? I ran the Furnace Reading Series, which was prose-based out of Hollow Earth Radio, and it was like one story read by one writer to completion, and then it was like a publishing element, and people would perform it in interesting ways, and it was really fucking exhausting. It was like the most like treacherous 5 years of my life, but also really beautiful. And then I ran a publication called the James Franco Review, which made sense. I swear it made sense from 2014 to 2017. It was like of the moment. And that was like an interruption of the publishing.
I didn't realize that was yours.
Yeah, that was me.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, I've read James Franco Review. Wow.
Yeah, just like a really shy person who was like living on an island, like did this. Yeah. Yeah. And I got like, you know, I contracted Lyme disease. I was like already really sick for years and having to kind of start to pull back, and then the pandemic happened. And so a lot of my work now is, you know, I'm working on like a vampire romance, hopefully for Generous Press. I am working on a memoir that's much more of this moment. And otherwise teaching a lot, which I can talk about more later.
Yeah, great. I'd met you, and I'm so excited to get to know you too as well here. And thank you, Torrey, for putting it all together. My name is Aster Olson. I'm a biologist from Florida, up here on the stage somehow. I started writing creatively over the pandemic, basically. I had a friend in zine culture, I guess I will call it. He was a distributor, and he wanted to put together something. And I was like, yeah, sure. I have nothing to do. And so that eventually led to me falling in love with writing and wanting to do more and more and more. I wound up here about 2 years ago, and since then, you know, I didn't know what the scene was like before. That everything y'all are talking about is very interesting, and I had no idea about it. I am kind of like, I joke that I'm powered by ignorance, where I just like, I have enthusiasm and I'm jumping in, and I don't know what anybody else is doing, but I just want to do something. And I think us being able to talk, and I'm forcing all of you to be at the reading series that I host. Oh, it's called Please Tea Read with Me, and it's at Charlie's, usually on the first Saturdays of each month. And very quickly, I did a self-published novella called Performance Review that is basically like government mandated sissy hypno, I guess is how I would describe it. But like, what if sissy hypno was evil? So, check that out. I also, okay, real quick, and then I want us to like talk. I have a zine series called Transplants that I am just anybody who's doing art, writing, and you're trans, and you can relate it to place in some way. I want your work, and I want to put it out there. Is the whole idea of it? Yeah, let's talk more. I don't want to lecture.
Thank you all for like coming and doing this with me. Yeah, so in the spirit of that, the thing that I did however many years ago where Sybil and Casey read, I thought I'd read, and then maybe everybody could really read a little bit of like a project that they're working on or have done. So I just wrote, well, I didn't just write it. Like on the way here. I have a new book. It's called Stag Dance. And I'll just say quickly, like the elevator pitch. Tomorrow I'm going to be at Charlie's talking, specifically about Stag Dance and anybody who really wants to talk about logger slang and it's a lumberjack story, which nobody was expecting, I think. Anyway, I'll be there at Charlie's talking about it. So I'll kind of give you a taste of it real fast, and then we can talk about it in the questions. But it's 4 pieces. The Americans call it a novel in stories. The British call it a quartet. The Germans call it a figure in 4, which is very German of them. And I think it's because nobody really knows how to describe exactly what this book is or the length of it. And it's 4 pieces, each in a different genre. First is, speculative fiction, teen romance, tall tale, Americana, and horror. And I'll read a little bit of the title story, which is Stag Dance. And to just kind of set it up real fast, the whole thing, again, I'll explain this better tomorrow night, but you can get a taste of it and be like, yeah, I don't want to do that, is written in logger slang, which I found a dictionary of logger slang and got like very obsessed with it. It is like really great. They have great language. Sorry, I didn't mark the page. And what happens in the story is the men are in the woods at like an illegal logging camp, and they get very lonely because they're logging in the winter, and they do a dance. They decide to put on a dance, and some of the men can go to the dance as women, and I'll just kind of read the scene where they describe how you mark that you want to go to the dance as a woman. And the main character is this big, tall. His name's Babe Bunyan. And they call him that because he's strong like Paul Bunyan, but he's as ugly as Paul Bunyan's ox, whose name's Babe. And he's like the big, strong lumberjack, and he decides he might want to go dance as a woman. Anyway, that's when I'm gonna try and do the lumberjack voice. I like. When I wrote this, I would read it aloud in this lumberjack voice that I don't even think it's authentic, but it's just like I needed to talk this way in order to write it. I'll try and get into it. That's when Daglish proposed the Stag Dance. He made a real production of it, as though we were being invited to a society affair, a cotillion or some such. He issued the invitation as I was leaned up in a line of men against the hash house shanty awaiting breakfast. Daylight had just then summited the peaks and shone through the ramparts of the boneyard trees left ruined on the east side of camp. The broken limbs cut the pink light into beams that lit here and there on the moisture of breath. All around us, yellows and browns brindled the white snow. Weeks of tossed grease, offal, spit, and piss. Working a winter camp is filthy that way. Everything a body leaves behind stays along until spring. Being timber pirates, we were a hardtack operation, not much in the way of fancy eating. But that morning, along with the usual spuds, the crumb boss tossed in 2 hard-boiled cackleberries apiece and a stack of maple syrup-drowned monkey blankets. I guessed it was an apology of sorts from Daglish, a way of buttering us up. He had been up since dawn with a pinch of Copenhagen deforming his upper lip, and he was spitting, glad-handing, and clapping shoulders like he was getting into politics. Finally, he stood up on a deacon seat and proclaimed that we'd all been cordially invited to the first annual winter jungle dance, to be held a fortnight hence. Formal attire requested, but tin pants and long johns accepted, so long as you wore your long johns on the inside. At that, he shot Boomer Campbell a blamesome look because Boomer always wore his long johns over his pants on the outside. Boomer insisted that his reversed order of wearing was the warmest, but after a month in the woods, his long johns were a disgusting sight. "My long johns stay out," yelled Boomer, "excepting when there's women present." Daglish did a little impish skip on the deacon's seat and grinned. For a heavy-set man, Daglish was nifty on the toe, prone to fancy hoofing. He had thick dark hair that stood and glistened in an unwashed wave, a handsome man of a thickened sort. Before he worked as a timber cruiser, whispers were he had fled to North Dakota after a healthy career as a firebug. Maybe you had a barn in need of burning for insurance reasons? He contrived to strike those lucifers to the kerosene hay some Sunday morning while you were in the pews. A godly alibi. "I'm glad you mentioned women," Daglish called back to Boomer. He unfurled a yard of brown fabric, the fabric that I had later thought so much about, and held it up for us to see. I stood at the edge of the crowd at that moment, peeling my cackleberry of the last bits of shell, and I was curious to see what some brown fabric had to do with women. Then Daglish produced a pair of shears and cut off the corner of the fabric into a small triangle, with the hypotenuse maybe 3 inches in length. He held up the triangle between his cracked and reddened fingers. We'll do our stag dance the way I learned in Saskatoon," Daglish declared. Some of the other men snickered, but I had no notion as to the nature of a Saskatoon dance. "Any man here that desires to go to the dance as a lady, you just cut yourself off a brown triangle and you pin it right over the fly of your pants, and that's how the rest of us know you're looking to be courted." He demonstrated by holding the triangle pinched between his finger in an inverted position right in front of his crotch, so it hung like a flat bush, an ersatz twat. To my left, Brunswick Bob, a wiry little power monkey who'd singed off his eyebrows in a blast, gave a wolf whistle. I'll just stop there. But that's basically... there's a lot of lumberjack talk, and then it all falls apart. And I'm happy to talk more about it, but maybe we can go this way if you want.
Do we have time for us to do readings?
I think you should read.
Okay. I will just read a flash piece that I wrote the other day. It is basically just about the moment right now and existing within it. It is called Open Submission Window Now Closed. Did you hear Executive Literary Review is open for submissions? You have 4 seconds to submit your best work that speaks to these unprecedented times. Do not write anything profane or upsetting to the editors, or it's an automatic rejection. They'll get back to you in 4 years. While you wait, watch transportation passages collapse like a bridge. Concrete support staffing structures hollowed out to increase efficiency and deliver cost savings. Wait while the environmental review editor drowns under a rising tide of petrochemicals. Wait as the automated voicemail of your local literary magazine's representative tells you that they receive a high volume of submissions and can't respond personally to each one. Your submission is important. Wait as you see news stories about others' rejection and remind yourself that they did not submit as well as you. Wait and debate what should be done with the ever-expanding numbers of rejections, and do not worry that most of those rejected aren't even writers and never submitted to begin with. Wait and do not cause a disturbance that would upset an editor. Wait in silence because you are one of the lucky ones whose submission will be rewarded. Wait while 100 species of tree go extinct and no one writes about it. Wait as the paper mills shudder and the inkwells boil and evaporate. Wait while you forget that you submitted in the first place. Wait for the right time to remind the editor about your submission. Wait until finally, a group of heavily illiterate men knock down your door and throw in a flashbang with the editor's decision. Thank you for your submission. We enjoyed it immensely, but we cannot accept everyone.
saying it was great.
I think it's your turn.
Aster, that was incredible.
It's for the writers out there.
It's for the. I feel like I have definitely had that like window close in 3 minutes because Submittable needed to verify my password or something. Okay. We kind of just decided to do this, so I didn't prepare. Sorry. Okay.
While Kareen finds that, I just want to ask about the pigs that are in like every story.
Oh my God, the pigs. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I'll say briefly, there are pigs in every story. And it was kind of like I don't know, I had a hard time with pigs in my life. There's pigs, the pigs and the mice, there's pigs and mice in it a lot, and they're just animals that I have trouble with. And at some point, it was like, when I was ordering the stories, I was like, I think I'm just going to order these stories from more pigs to less pigs. Yeah. So that's an ordering kind of mechanism. Please.
This is from Professor M, and we had no rules. The dog wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to her, and so did the house and the 60s-style turquoise bookshelf that we purchased together, the pots and pans, the soap dish in the bathroom. They were her idea. Intellectual property, she shouted at me during a fight in which we were both sobbing. That's for articles and screenplays, not Boris. I pressed my face into the dog's neck and gave a deep moan that came from somewhere untouched, like the socket of my hip. It startled all of us. Boris turned and licked at my face. I can't be without this dog. Well, I don't know what to do. Julia bit her lip. She watched me from across the room and tore at this one sad piece of her hair that took the brunt of all her stress. Back when we weren't in the process of breaking up, I would have pulled her hand away. Sometimes I would kiss it, but now it made an awful snapping sound, and I could picture the day when, without my intervention, that patch of hair would wilt and crumple to the floor, leaving a quarter-sized bald spot. I tugged between the satisfaction of that image and the dwindling part of me that wanted only sweet, good things for her. We would have to see each other pretty regularly, and I just don't think I could handle that after what you've done, she said. These words worked like a spell. I kissed Boris's neck and smelled pine and shit and some chemical from the dog's shampoo. I rubbed between her eyes, then stood with my duffel bag. I'll come by next weekend to pick up my books. When Boris was a puppy, she sat in my lap and I held her, totally enamored by her softness, her buttery bones and joints, how she seemed ready to spill out into my hands. This is why people have babies, I'd said to Julia. When they're soft like this, I bet you can really feel their souls. Of course, I can't imagine what it would feel like to hold a human soul in my hand, but holding Boris, her soul available and pliable like paraffin, was one of the greatest things I'd ever done. I felt like I was connected to her soul in this very pure way. So even after she became muscled and fully formed, with the proud, broad chest of a bulldog, I could stare into her eyes and still feel the, how can I say it, availability of her spirit.
Hello again. Am I allowed to say fuck on this mic? Okay, great. Just want to make sure. So I'm not used to sitting down, but we're going to try it. Okay. This is so hard to sit and read stuff. Okay. I've been in and out of the Pacific Ocean. Across this wretchedly beautiful fuckery of borders we call a country, I've been to love, but never through it. I've been through 2 puberties, y'all. It's really hot. A library wall filled with unfinished books on heartbreak, about 13 breakdowns and only 2 breakthroughs, and I've driven what feels like 1 million more internet Zoom miles from out of the weather of reigning expectations and unpredictions to this gallery of skeletons to tell all of you, make a fucking mistake. I watched a Facebook video wherein the bass drum of an orchestra hit his note with so much passion, the drum mallet flew from his hands and hit the triangle player square in the face. The song never missed a note, but I imagine in another dimension that woman yelled, "Fuck," so loudly that it bounced off the walls of the amphitheater and into the mouths of the pro-Nexus wealthy white women, and fuck, 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 fuck became the best remix the symphony has ever heard. My mother may not be as out of her mind as I make her out to be, probably. But she had to have been, to have created an offspring with the man I'm supposed to call father on purpose, and that makes me a mistake. But look at what this mistake can do. Look how many lives I've lived. Look how many people can love me. Look, I can learn and change and grow and evolve. Look at the moon. It's not there, but I'm a Cancer and I'm dramatic, so I would really appreciate it if you pretended it was. Look at the moon. Thank you. I read somewhere that a former planet shoulder-checked a piece of our planet, and that piece got captured in the orbit. We call her the moon. And I think that she had the opportunity to roam the entire universe, but she fell so in love with our faces that she committed her body to be on night watch for eternity. Tell me you can't find the beauty in mistakes. I've lost a lot of friends, life, sanity, time making mistakes, but I can only hope that I walk this life differently because of them. Next time, I'll be so much better, I promise. Tomorrow, I will stand in front of a woman I've never even felt worthy of looking at. She pays all her bills on time and wakes up early to like do Pilates or some shit. And she makes her mom proud. And I will say, make a mistake with me. I've lived on this broken piece of rock for 41 years and I've literally never been right about anything. So why would I be right about you? So come with me. We'll spill our combined traumas on each other's shirts. Let's feel really uncomfortable with what we said out loud. Let's go to the wrong airport on the wrong day and still get on the plane when it's actually time, because the air is human. So let's be so human our flesh stinks of fuck up. It'll be my fault, your bad, and our misstep, and we'll just do better next time. I'm sorry in advance for tripping on you. I'm sorry if my drumstick hits your face, but the beat is different now, and fuck, it's beautiful. Thanks.
So good to hear you again. So good to hear you all. So here's the honest truth. We talked about it in the green room, and then suddenly we were going to do a reading. And then I literally walked out of the green room without my phone for something brand new. And then right as we got on stage, there's a bag over there with like my books in it. But so I don't have anything on me to read, but I do have a song for you. Is the song okay? Or we could get the bag. Which would you prefer? Do you want a poem or a song? Okay. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, but we're doing a song?
It's on for you.
All right. Well, here's the lament. Oh, Lord, bring me a lover that won't let me down. Oh, Lord, bring me a lover that won't let me down. Oh, Lord, bring me a lover that won't let me down. And I'll stop running all over town, Lord. Bring me a lover that won't let me down. Oh, Lord, go on and pay some of these bills, Lord. Oh, Lord, go on and pay some of these bills. Whoa, Lord, go on and pay some of these bills. I'm tired of being grown. It's a rotten deal, Lord. Go on and pay some of these bills. Oh, Lord, won't you help me find peace of mind? Oh, Lord, won't you help me find peace of mind? Oh, Lord, won't you help me find peace of mind? I've been troubled and the world's unkind, Lord. Won't you help me find peace of mind? One more. Oh, Lord, bring me joy like I've never known. Oh, Lord, bring me joy like like I've never known. Oh, Lord, bring me joy like I've never known. I know I'm ready to call it my own. Lord, bring me joy. Lord, bring me joy. Lord, bring me joy like I've never known. Thank you.
Upstaged at my own reading by all of you.
No.
Well, I want to leave time for author questions. We started a little late, so I'd like to do one last little bit of questions, and I'll just say something that is going on for me right now, and why I think it's good to get in the room with other writers. Is I'm trying to write a new novel, and when you're writing a novel, you're like, it's going to take 3 years, and what's happened is I can't figure out what the future is going to be, like. I'm trying to write realism, and which means that I have to be like, what's it going to look like in 3 years? And I have to pitch my novel into when it gets published in 3 years. But things are changing so fast that I don't want to, on one hand, create some super dark dystopia and look like I'm hysterical, but on the same time, I also don't want to misguess it and basically create some sort of happy propaganda about what's actually happening. And so it's been very, very hard for me to figure out how to do this next novel. And I've thought about different techniques, but usually I think you can do allegory or historical fiction or all those things, but I use them all up in this collection. So I'm just trying to figure it out. And I've got some thoughts, but I'm curious what all of you are doing in this moment to trying to make your art.
Yeah, I have that same problem right now. I already wrote kind of the dark dystopian fantasy when I was in Florida, and I underestimated everything. So now I just look kind of stupid. I was like, oh, that was a really hopeful story I told. But yeah, I have 2 stories I've switched back and forth right now, and they're both focused around women who are navigating being stealth in different societal systems, basically, and one's in the future and one's in the present. And I think my focus of what I'm trying to do is just look at systems and how individuals navigate them, fail at them, probably more so than succeed. And really it's telling stories about a system instead of a person almost. I'm not sure, but that's a approach I'm trying right now.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm working on a couple projects. It is really hard to concentrate. I have felt really defeated by publishing, and so a thing that I've done, especially with my memoir, which has essays, really essays kind of about this moment, about death, about desire and longing, in particular, my relationship and failure to desire and longing, and I am there's no, why would I put myself through submitting these essays after, I had a novel that I wrote after We Had No Rules that I couldn't get published. And so I started a Substack called Desire as Craft, and that has been a way where I feel I write an essay or I write a chapter. Sometimes it's not even a thing that will necessarily be in the book, but it feels adjacent. And having I don't have a huge readership, but maybe more after tonight. I have my 100 friends from across time who are really supportive of it. But it's this way of that instantaneous feeling and having connection And often I get to be in conversation as a result of that. So that's been really helpful as a way of writing it. And then I'm writing this like vampire romance, which like I get to be so weird. And I'm worried I worried you, Amber, when I was like, oh, there's this cult and like they like they're known for having they like say that they have Jesus's foreskin and Amber was
I'm
like,
not worried at all. I'm like, okay, let's go there.
And it's a romance, yeah. So
Sounds like one to me.
yeah.
Cool. So I struggle with this idea that you're talking about because as a spoken word poet, I feel like there's this like obligation to be on the pulse of what's happening currently at all times, right? And to respond in this sort of way. And I feel like that has sort of hindered me from wanting to do anything. I'm like, I'm not answering to this crap, like I don't want to do that. But I think what ends up happening for me too is taking that time to not have to be the creator and be like the listener and the absorber of things. And so not only being part of groups that are building these stages for other folks, but just going to them, right? Like just hearing what other people have to say is often the inspiration that I need to think about something differently or have a different perspective, or even just that start of something of like, oh, why did you do that, right? Like that inspires me to want to get back to creating. But I always remember that sometimes it's not about creating in the sense of like I'm sitting writing or in front of a computer or whatever the case may be, but sometimes absorbing is part of that process.
Taking a Beyonce year.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Beyonce. It's just like I went around and I looked at art. I watched art. I absorbed art for a year before I created again. Yeah. Beyonce year. I took a vow of abstaining from producing this year because I found that I was only making things towards a project. And there was this pressure, like, especially when you get on social media, especially when you know a lot of artists, when you've been in the community so long and you're like, I'm certainly not doing enough. Like, this person's getting published here. This person's getting published. This is happening. I didn't apply for that award. I didn't apply for that residency. And you get into that spiral. So I get into that spiral so quickly that this year I started therapy. And thank you. It's been years in the making. But I really realized that I didn't remember the last time I just wrote because it was for fun, that I wasn't immediately trying to think what I was going to use it for. And it had been so long. And I mean, that's why I started singing again. That was my first art form, and coming back to it was because it brought so much joy. But then you put out an album, and then you're like, okay, and now it's a work. Like now I got to put this out, and I got to promote this, and I got to do this. So, like, forcing myself to say I'm not going to try to put anything out has been the way that I'm disrupting. And I absolutely am doing the same thing of like, how do I see more art? How do I who am I in conversation with? What are they saying out there? I doing deep studies of one author, like I used to do when I was in high school, and I discovered Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I was like, I'm gonna read everything he ever wrote, Problematic now, turns out, can't go back to certain things. But there's this like, this thirst. And I'm remembering that, luckily, I get to be in conversations with a lot of writers, and all of us feel this way. All of us are like, how do we write through this? How do we write with any kind of joy? Or do we only address this thing that is killing us, that is like grinding us down? How do we navigate? How do we navigate now? And I'm just trying new shit. Like, really, like, I'm writing flash horror fiction. I don't know if I'm good at it. I don't have to be, because nobody's expecting it from me. So if I do it and it's good, I'm like, woo, that's for me, yeah. But like, it's that thing of, right now I'm exploring, why doesn't anybody talk about periods in apocalypse stories? Like, do we just no longer bleed in the apocalypse? And if there's toilet paper shortage, don't you think that there would be? So I'm like, what if that's the whole premise of like a horror story? Is that there's not only a TP shortage, but like everyone with a uterus goes feral, like they don't know what's happening, and it just starts killing men. It's a whole thing. But I'm gonna try it, right? Like, it sounds cool. I can fail. I can fail at it, and I think allowing, like, Black women are quitting. I quit. I'm done trying to save it with my blood, sweat, and tears. So how do I just do it for my own pleasure and know that there's people who are thirsty and desperate to feel that allowance themselves?
I want to save time, a little bit of time for questions, but I'll just say one kind of closing thought on this myself, which is that, like, this is actually how I'm answering it. Like, I could have done just like a regular book talk, and I wanted to do this. And I think that, like, for me, I get a little bit disconnected from this. You know, I go around and people ask me, like, oh, I wanna write. And then they say, like, how did you get your agent? How did you, you know, what's your book deal, et cetera, et cetera. And, like, how can I do that? And in fact, like, the way I did it was this, coming to things like this, talking to other writers. And, you know, I understand that, like, Andrea Long-Chu, I was wearing this suit the other day, and she said that I looked like the surprise guest at a business casual gender reveal party. It's a boy, obviously. You know, I understand that people don't understand that, like, this is the, like, what I actually really like is self-publishing. I like readings. I like people doing things. I like that there was a song I didn't expect it. It was beautiful. I mean, it's like really like stunning moment, you know, and that happens when you get to do stuff like this. And, like, what I wanted to do, I wanted to answer that question of, like, how do I actually write a novel in this moment? And the way I write a novel in this moment is I come to things like this. You all came to stuff like this. I haven't been to Seattle in a long time, but now here's, if you ask me, like, don't be like, how'd you get an agent? Be like, how do I do this? And here's 4 people who are doing, like, incredible things in this city. You can go to their events, and not only that, you can read at their events. You can write things with them. You can participate. You can do vampire romance. I don't know if you're looking for new writers, but, like, I don't want to, like, send a bunch.
I have a writing workshop as well that
Yeah.
I totally forgot to
There's
mention. Yeah.
so much to do, and, like, and for me, like, that's actually what how I think I want to sustain myself. So thank you all for coming out for this sort of unorthodox version of a book reading, and thank you. Well, we're not ending. You all can ask questions, so we'll hold on to my thanks. Does anyone have questions? We can talk about whatever you want.
Come on now.
So, Torrey, one thing you do that I think a lot of contemporary writers do that I adore, but some I find controversial, is you post on Instagram. And one thing you post on Instagram every now and then is some really good motorcycle posting. And so as I'm sitting there thinking, I really want to be brave and ask a question, I'm curious if our panel has any favorite piece of, like, motorcycle literature or motorcycle media.
I mean, Leather Daddy and the Femme.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, come on, like, entry level, you gotta get Leather Daddy and the Femme.
Any other favorite motorcycle?
Somebody in the second issue of the zine wrote a very moving essay about her taking a motorcycle trip and finding community. So I thought that was really pretty.
That's not. This is actually extremely apropos, because the whole thing was I was talking about, like, DIY stuff and how you can participate in things. On the East Coast, there's a thing called T for T Moto something. I participated and I forgot the name, but this is the worst promotion of this thing ever. But I did 2 days of motorcycling with all trans people, and we, like, went through small towns and things like that. And then all the people who were part of that trip put together a zine. And so I will say that that's probably my favorite current, you know, talking about being trans motorcyclists and, like, what it feels like to roll up in a kind of, like, I mean, we rolled up 20 trans motorcyclists into small towns, and how that feels different than, you know, your typical biker gang. Yeah, and there were a lot of really interesting reflections on that. So that's my favorite piece of motorcycle literature right now.
Thank you so much for coming out here tonight. Torrey, I think something that I've noticed in a few of your stories is how you have people with like trans experiences who are not currently like identifying as trans for one reason or another. I'm kind of wondering like what it is about that like contradictory definition or like definitionlessness that like feels like it's like drawing to you in your writing.
Right now, I think that the like binary that I'm exploring isn't like male female. It is a cis trans binary, and kind of breaking what counts as, trying to figure out what counts as trans, what counts as cis. So there's actually only like 4 characters in this book who might identify as trans, and the rest just have kind of gender feelings, of some sort. And the thing for me is like I think the way that a lot of people talk about trans experiences, it's very other, but in fact the building blocks of trans experience for me are things like desire. They're things like shame. They're like the things about like the distance between how you want the world to see you and how the world sees you. And in fact, those things are everywhere for everybody doing a gender. And what I think happens when you kind of take away a lot of the sort of ideas of identity and the borders is that people feel emotions as they read. And then instead of kind of like coming to that with being like, oh, this is what transphobia is, or this is what homophobia is, or whatever, they just kind of feel a thing, and then they go look for reasons why. And when you start going, like, finding the reasons for your emotion, I think you can come to whole new different conclusions as readers. And I hope that, like, trans people, I hope they feel seen in that way, but I also hope that other people can basically be like, oh, I read this book and I felt it, and like, that was the first thing. I'm experiencing this emotion first, rather than sort of intellectual identity kind of category first. Are any of you all interested in this, or like is that something that? Yes. Yeah, one yes.
No, absolutely.
I was like thinking about your novel, and I was like, this is like an asymptotic approach to transness. Like you get close and close and close, but you're never like reaching it. And so like you're kind of like sliding in by the side. And that's kind of this like, I don't know, like side passage to like get at these things where like to put a name onto something is to like put contours around it and expectations and limitations and people who want to guard the borders and everything, right? Or get in or get out or whatever. And so by avoiding all of that, it just opens up so much.
I'm going to steal that word, asymptotic.
Okay, yeah.
I'll be like, I wrote an asymptotic book. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. Do anyone else want to speak to her? Should we do the next question?
I mean, we could chat it up,
Yeah.
but I would,
Yeah, well, let's see. Hi.
Quick question. I've really enjoyed your new book, but I was curious where the idea for the Stag Dance logger story came from. Yeah.
I got really into saunas last year. I went to Finland, and I just got very into sauna, and I have a cabin in Vermont, and I decided I was going to build my own sauna, and so I like literally have a chainsaw and started cutting down trees, and I got very much like, oh, this is a spruce, this is a balsam fir, wow, and also I was like very cold and dirty a lot of the time, and I was just like, oh, I wonder what this is like, what this was like for people. And I think the other, so I was thinking about it, and then also I felt a lot of expectations to follow up on Detransition Baby in a sort of like urbane New York kind of way, and I was like really oppressed by that, and I was thinking about trees and loggers in the first place, and then I was like, I feel really oppressed by the idea of following up Detransition Baby, and I was like, well, nobody is looking for a logger novel in logger slang, and so I can do whatever I want. And in fact, like, I'll just say one thing. I don't want to talk totally about my novel too much, but like, writing in logger slang like freed me up so that I could talk about things that I normally would say in modern language that feel kind of dead to me, like I sometimes say like a word like gender dysphoria. You say the word gender dysphoria, it just like clunk, it falls on the floor. There's no life to it. But a logger would never say gender dysphoria in the first place. So, or at least like in 19, they might now, but in 1915 they wouldn't. So then I was like, well, what would Babe Bunyan say about how he feels about himself? So like the line for gender dysphoria is, he says, "No mirror has ever befriended me," and that is actually how I feel about gender dysphoria. And so it was like having to be a logger made me. Well, I wasn't actually a logger, but to live in the head of the logger made me.
Played one on TV.
Yeah. I had to sort of, it reinvigorated a lot of the stuff that I was writing and made me interested in it again. Yeah. Which it's funny to say that to like an actual poet on stage. I was like, did you know that language can be new? Never heard that. Well, you're 17, so one day you'll learn. Yeah.
Hi. I noticed the last story in your collection, the main character really like analyzed their own experiences through the lens of online sissy daddy porn. And I was wondering for everyone if you could talk about the influence that like queer, weird online smut has had on your writing.
This is a great one. So the last story in my book, full of that, I hope you all read it, but I'm going to turn it over because I'm curious what online smut you all have been into.
I just need to say that is one of my students, and I'm so proud right now.
No one's going to say?
But now
I mean, I wrote a novella about sissy hypno. I mean, there's this. The interesting thing about that is there's like erotic hypnosis is very popular with like cis women, and like there's this particular type that like was made for cis women, and then like trans women found it, and now it's kind of like the cis women who are into it are like, why are you like taking our thing? And I was just like, I came across it and I was like, oh no, this was like made for trans women. But like the whole idea of it is like it's this permission structure, right? So it's telling you like you want to be like really hot, you want to be like really desirable, and like it's not up to you. Like there's an outside force that's going to do all that to you. And I think that is, you know, just how so many of these gender type online weird smuts, that's like ultimately what it gets down to.
I read a newsletter that somebody wrote that was about cis women that started, who were into that, the like sort of for cis women that started then getting really into sissy hypno.
No, okay, I've seen this too.
And I basically think this like illustrates the point that we just talked about, right? That basically there's a desire, like I want some larger force to transform me. And then the idea that like this porn is for cis women, this porn is for trans women or whatever, like it all falls apart in like the messiness of desire. Like, and that's what, you know, that those are things that I was exploring. Anyone else want to share their online smut? No? Okay.
I have to say that Generous Press's third book that is coming out this fall is a reworking of a Kate Bornstein and Caitlin Sullivan wrote this this smutty gender fuck thing literally in the AOL chat rooms of the 90s. And so Nearly Roadkill is being rebooted with a 2025 character being inserted that finds this archive of this revolution. And so like that's immediately where I went to, is this like what was happening in the 90s and how relevant it is to the new kinds of restrictions that are coming around this, like, how do you identify? How are you going to be conscripted into those boxes? And like the very easy way to slip out of those kinds of constraints, and that's always really sexy to me. So that's my secret thing, is like the ones who are like, I appear this way, but it's a costume. That's how I feel about gender personally. So it's a costume. Ta-da! Today I'm this. Tomorrow maybe not. You know. And I love those gender slips more than gender fucks. You know, like that's become a thing But gender slipping is a different, sexier, sliderier.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, am I close enough? Sorry, this question is actually for Aster. So you mentioned that you were a biologist in Florida, and then you started writing during the pandemic. What I'd like to hear about is like, how did you start? Like, what did you do to get the process of being a writer started?
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you. I think like what I really first was doing was processing my own feelings. And I first started that in a way of kind of more like journal entries. But I didn't feel that that was like adequate, or it felt like limiting. And I think the first thing I tried writing that was more of just like creating a character that wasn't me was a woman who's like running drugs to Tallahassee, and the drugs are like also hormones. And it was just like a way of dealing with like the like Ron DeSantis bullshit that was going on at the time. And then from that, it was just like, I want to learn how to do this better. So it's just this curiosity, I would say, and this like drive to, keep failing, and then you reach a point where you like fail a little less. But yeah, I mean, it's just like there's so many resources online that you can just like go kind of be like, oh, this is how you think people should write a scene. This other person thinks you should write it this way. How do I want to write the scene? Let me try these different ways. What works for me? What doesn't? Just a lot of experimentation, a lot of curiosity and playfulness, and then I guess like a discipline going along with that too, because after a while, sometimes it's not fun. And if you want to keep improving at something, when you hit that roadblock, I think that's like the hard part for me, at least, is to push through that. But it's been just really rewarding for me. I've really enjoyed kind of unlocking this creative side and having the more of my like, I don't know. It's strange because it's like I have like a my serious, I don't know, like job side, and then like I do this other thing, and I'm like, those are kind of like separate worlds. I'm trying to figure out a way to like combine them, but yeah, it's just been interesting. But yeah, I encourage you to do it.
And that was in your poem too. Just come mess up. Come.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, if you just like are perfect, it's easy.
And last question.
Okay, so you've been talking a lot about, hi, Corinne, just like the importance of community in writing, and I'm kind of wondering like if you've ever experienced sort of a fatigue of like writing world, as I've come to think of it, and any like tips for getting out of those ruts of like niches and places.
After Detransition Baby, I like didn't really do anything for like a year in terms of community. I felt very, I was very grateful for the success of it, but also I felt somewhat misunderstood, and that like I'd be like, I went to, I know people go to in New York, people here, but like I went to Metropolitan, which is like this queer bar in Williamsburg, and I had always gone there, and it was like, it was just like a place I could go. And I went after Detransition Baby came out, and like people thought they like knew me, which is like, a ridiculous thing to say, because of course they thought that I wrote a book and I published it in the world. But it was hard because like what I felt like was there was things like envy, there was things like resentment, there was things like, you're in your book, you spoke for us, and that's actually not what our experience is. You're taking up a lot of space, and those things are real. like, you know, and I think that like that is actually, eventually I was dealing with that. I dealt with a lot of that stuff in my writing, you know, how do you deal with that kind of thing. And then eventually after a period of time, you know, I got very excited to speak to people again. I just got lonely. And I think that's just kind of how it works. It's like it's like the process it goes in waves. You know, you take a year off to not produce. You do all these different things, and you forgive yourself for like having very, very human emotions about it. Like, who do you think you are to judge me or whatever? And it's like, that's just petty of me, but that is how I feel. And like, okay, all of us are together being super petty. And so then you kind of forgive each other, you know? And that happened for me. And yeah, so how about you all?
Yeah, I will also say that people are annoying. Like, that's never gonna change, right? Like, people are annoying. And I think that as a writer or an artist or whatever it is that you do, I think it is important to not always be around that same group of people or that same community at all times, and finding these different other places of finding, you know, like of sharing your art or expressing yourself, or maybe you're just sitting there to absorb. Like, I think my like relationships I've made with musicians or with painters like have been really beneficial to me, right? Because of the way they have to do it different, and then sharing and expressing the way art happens for us. So take the break, because they're annoying, like, period. Like, they're always gonna be annoying, and you can come back later, right? Like, I remember there was a writing institute, and like everybody in there pissed me off, like every single person. And I just needed to take a break, so I did. It was mostly you. But but like, you have to take a break, right? And just do something else for a while. In the same ways that we take breaks from I take breaks from writing poetry. I wrote a play once, right? And so just taking that break and doing something else to get your brain to reset too.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Thank you all for coming out for this, for my first ever talk show. I enjoy it. It's really wonderful to have you here. I will be at Charlie's tomorrow talking all about the stories in Stag Dance. If that lumberjack wasn't enough for you the first time, there'll probably be more, and now no one comes. So come to that if you'd like. We'll all be signing books afterwards, and come talk to us, come hang out. That's what this is about. That's what I wanted to do tonight. So thank you all for being here.